Welcome to Yacht Crew Vlogs, where we tell the stories of those in the yachting industry. A behind-the-scenes look that discovers the individuals in the industry, their history, their passions, and what inspires them to do what they do. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome my next guest, Richard Hodder from Pelion Cybersecurity. How are you?
Hi, Ria. I'm very good, thanks. Good to see you again.
You as well. Now, unfortunately, we're not having you on board today because of good news. Of course, as we all woke up this morning in Europe at 5 a.m. CET time this morning, Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, I think we all sort of saw this coming, but still were shocked when it actually happened.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think, with the whole build-up and the rhetoric that's been going backwards and forwards, I think it's always a shock to see this kind of thing happening, especially here in Europe. It's pretty close to home. And it's almost history repeating itself in many ways.
Well, now, of course, the West is doing what they can to push back. And prior to heading out on the grounds of full-scale war, of course, they're going to start implementing economic sanctions. There's a myriad of other things that they're going to do first to try to stop the situation, or at least get everybody back to the bargaining table without lives being lost, or more lives, because obviously there have been lives lost already. Now, Putin actually stated that if the West interferes, they will see something like they have never seen before. Now, we know that Russia in the past, whether it be government sanctioned or not, they are probably the foremost hackers in the world. And, there could be even kids in Russia or tech guys in Russia that are playing games around the world. And I'm sure some of it is government sanctioned, but we'll never know for sure. But now, I guarantee you, there is going to be a full-fledged government approval of any way to attack the West. And in recent months, we have seen entire marine companies going down. The shipping industry has gone down, and they're still suffering. I mean, I think there's one company that's a week in to a massive ransomware attack. They're losing money. Their shareholders are losing money. They're not able to get the goods out where they need to get out. I mean, on top of the chaos that COVID has already provided for us, how worried should the yachting industry be? Should the maritime industry be? How worried should they be about the fact that this might indeed take place?
Well, not just the yachting and maritime industries. I mean, we should all be fairly worried about this. It's been a long time coming, and effectively we see cyber and cyber attacks replacing the conventional nuclear option, which the whole Cold War was about. And in many ways, it could be just as destructive in terms of attacking critical infrastructure. So where a lot of these systems are now on the internet, be that power stations, the whole financial system, maritime, as we know, not enough has really been done to protect these systems and ensure that they don't become a target. Or even if they're not a target, they might necessarily not be the target. They could become collateral in a wider attack on critical infrastructure. Just look at the Maersk attack 3 years ago. That was not an attack targeted at Maersk itself. Maersk became a victim of that due to collateral. The attack was destined for somebody else. So, yeah, there's a few things we need to be worried about. I would say the maritime and yachting industry does need to be concerned. And in some ways, those first steps are being made to ensure that they are protected. However, there's still a lot of work to do.
Well, analysts have said that Putin has been planning this, and you see now, looking back in hindsight, you see strategic steps since about 2010 and 2011 for him to, gradually sort of bring everything back into Russia and build up the reserves in Russia and not have so much money elsewhere in foreign banks, et cetera. Could that not be said is similar in a cyber situation? Because, cybersecurity, as we have spoken about before, you don't always know it's coming. Sometimes these things are planted 3 years, 4 years in advance, and you don't know it's there. And when they decide to take action, they've already infiltrated your systems. They're already in your system. And all they have to do is hit a button, and there it goes.
Definitely. And I would say the whole yachting industry and many industries are already infiltrated by various types of malware, spyware that we don't even know about yet. And let's not be under any illusions here. The cyber war and kinetic war go hand in hand. So, like you mentioned there, over the last however many years, decades, maybe even longer, cyber attacks will have been going on to prepare for the kinetic war that we're now seeing in Ukraine. So the two do go hand in hand. And usually you see cyber attacks that lead up to the kinetic attacks. And then, and as you rightly mentioned, the potential attacks on the UK, the US, Europe now for, trying to stand strong. They're in a bit of a tricky situation, because if they do make any move, then I'm pretty sure there's a lot of vulnerable targets across a lot of nations in the West that are going to be targeted. And we're going to see some unfortunate collateral in that, I would have thought. But the two go hand in hand.
Well, and I mean, realistically, war is brought about by the need for more power and more wealth. There is no better way to get power over somebody else and more wealth than to attack critical infrastructure that is now completely computerized. Because you can actually stop another country completely if you really wanted to, and without any bloodshed, just by simply attacking their computer systems.
Well, the bloodshed will be the consequence as well, potentially. I mean, you worst case scenario, you've got the downfall of whole societies here. You can potentially attack the power grid, take out the power, you attack the financial system, stop money coming out. The consequences are pretty dire in, worth considering. If we don't have access to those basics that we're used to, everything we do is electronic nowadays, like you say. So, those consequences could be dire, and the bloodshed is not going to come from the enemy. The enemy basically facilitates that by shutting down this infrastructure, and the bloodshed comes from within with, goodness knows what riots and other means.
Well, I mean, the lack of, as we've seen in shipping companies, the lack of food being delivered. There's a lot of things that, we rely on in our day-to-day lives. Basic toiletries, medicine. Mm-hmm. All of these things rely on the shipping industry and the maritime industry. So,
what a great way to do it. I mean, if you don't have any food or water coming through, the supply chain is, as you know, just in time anyway. Totally based on electronics and everything tracked in the computer world. So we saw it during the coronavirus, didn't we? At the beginning of the pandemic, when there was rush buying on particular products, and in the supermarkets, the shelves going empty. We won't mention what those products were, but we've seen it before, and how easy it is to shut down the supply chain and those consequences. We've also seen over the past years attacks not necessarily coming from adversaries of the West, but in the US, there's been attacks on water treatment plants, for example. So that involved an ex-employee in Florida. I think it's happened a couple of times over in the US. But effectively, an employee still had access to the systems, got in there, changed the settings of the chemicals that go in the water to clean it and treat it, and could have potentially poisoned most of Florida had they drunk that water later on. So, we're teetering on the verge, I would say, of something potentially very bad happening if we yeah, if we're not too careful. So I can understand there's the apprehension from the West to get too involved. But at the same time, yeah, we do need to watch our back and make sure that those critical systems are as secure as they can be. Problem is, a lot of them are not. So,
well, I mean, I don't want this to be all fear and gloom and doom, but what I see on social media right now is more people are worried about a nuclear reaction. But as we all know, and if you have even gone to school, you know that any nuclear action would have deadly consequences around the face of the entire world. So you throw off a nuclear attack, you're killing yourself as well, with the environmental consequences of that. So what a better way. And I just don't think that we have seen people taking cybersecurity as seriously as they should be ever. And I don't understand that when it comes to, and I've had this conversation with you before, when it comes to their office building in New York, if we're talking about a Wall Street firm, they are so careful of their security. They get it tested, with stocks and bonds, they're trading, the trading companies, whatever, they are on top of that. But the minute they walk away from that and they walk into their home, or they walk onto their yacht, or they get onto their jet, or in their, chauffeured car, they don't think about those kind of things. But the threat is just as equal there as it is in their New York office building or their London office building. And they're still doing the same business that they would do in their office. They're still doing bank transfers. They're still discussing, highly, proprietary information that could cause trouble.
Absolutely. You mentioned the nuclear option there. I think with nuclear, it's a lot more visual. People can see it. We've seen the results of what dropping nuclear bombs can do already. And I like the acronym Mutually Assured Destruction, MAD. That was in place and really stopped the West and the USSR back in the day, pressing the button and dropping bombs on each other. And I think up until recently in the cyber world, between the two sides, we've maybe seen an element of that. But when it comes to the whole cyber side, I think people can see it in terms of protecting their business and protecting the assets that they've got. When we get to it on an individual level, being able to visualize that and visualize the consequences is very difficult. So we talk about all these things that could happen and have been happening in terms of attacks on critical infrastructure, but there's been no real devastation caused by that as of yet. Now the potential is still there for that devastation to happen, but how do you really put it across? It seems like sci-fi. It seems like something that would happen in a movie.
Well, see, I think too is that it's not sexy enough for mainstream media.
Absolutely.
This morning all we saw was a guy putting on his flak jacket and his helmet because all of a sudden he saw bombs going off way away. But then you could see those little flashes, and there was that sort of visual appeal. And I shouldn't even say appeal, but the fact of the matter is, it's like you and I driving by a car wreck. I mean, we don't want to look, but we stare, right?
Absolutely.
So with cybersecurity and with cyber attacks, it rarely makes the news. And if it does make the news, it's a tiny little, bit on the bottom right-hand corner of your newspaper. So people just don't even think about it.
Well, it's another thing as well. I think as human beings, if we get down to what, our basic instincts, we're naturally we're predators. We've always been on the attack. So it's a lot easier to attack something. And that's why I think you see in the cyber world so many attacks. And the fact that we're so poor at defending those attacks, because we don't expect it, as when we get to that innate instinct that makes us human. We've always, back through the ages, been hunting to survive, hunting for food. As a species, we are one of the only species that teams up together to actually attack another group of the same species. So there's maybe some, deeper questions here into, why we can't defend ourselves from those cyber attacks, or why we find it so difficult. And if you think how quickly the technology has evolved, and the kind of breakdown of community that we have generally around the world. We used to be protected by our communities and our villages and what have you. But nowadays, people are looking for that community on the internet, in their games, on forums, etc., etc. So I think being able to actually protect ourselves, are we evolving quick enough to keep up with the technology that we've now got in place, which is really almost taken over the human psyche in many ways. So we're getting left behind, whereas the technology is evolving so quickly, and can we really get our heads around it to understand the implications and why we need to defend ourselves. And if we do look at the cyberspace, so many more people get involved in cyber attacks. You can make money very quickly, quick buck here. All the tools are there, are available. Very easy to go out and do that attack. You can basically buy attacks as a service nowadays, so ransomware as a service, whatever it might be. Protecting against those things, they're different game, because are we wired that way to actually think about it and put the protections in place? So without getting too deep there and philosophical, I think there's quite a few different facets to the whole situation that we're seeing at the moment.
Let me ask you, one of the things that, in every fortress, there's always that weak spot that somebody goes for. Do you think us as individual human beings, not as the corporations, do you think that us individual human beings are that weak spot? Because we take our laptops home, we take our laptops into work, we take our phones home, we take our phones into work. Is that not an ideal place for somebody to piggyback off and get into a system at a large corporation?
We are the weak spot, yes. And as human beings, we're very trusting, I think, of other people. We naturally want to go and help each other, and we're always, at the same time, we're quite lazy beings in terms of we look for the path of least resistance to get what we need done. So the age of convenience has, created a world where, we always need our phone with us. Instead of going and checking something, we'll have our phone and we'll do it on the phone. We trust the information that's there. We trust what we're seeing. We want that instant gratification.
Well, and not only that, we're cheap. So what happens is that we're sitting at home, we're on our Wi-Fi network, and then we go out and we're on the wireless network, and then we go into our office. And because we are cheap human beings, we're not going to want to use our minutes in order to access the internet. So the first thing that we do is we hook up to the office's Wi-Fi network, which opens up that whole can of beans.
Definitely. And the Wi-Fi is one of the most dangerous places that you can actually go, especially public Wi-Fi. This is something I talk to countless yacht crews about, is you guys as individuals do not go into the cafe by all means, but think twice before you connect to that cafe Wi-Fi or the airport Wi-Fi. If you do need to connect, then take the precautions to do that. Use a VPN and ensure that your traffic's encrypted as it leaves that building, because you don't know who sat there looking for that information. And as a crew member of a multi-million-dollar yacht with high-profile owners and guests, they're going to be the easy target for cyber criminals to target and then get them to the next level. You're also thinking about the number of people that leave their laptop on the train or in the cafe. We leave our phones behind. Again, you turn away for one moment, somebody swiped it. Maybe you've forgotten it. In terms of targeted attacks towards the yachting industry, we're definitely the easy target. And that's where we need to be a lot more aware that we are the target, and not help other people then, gain further access to the yacht and get closer to the owners of the yacht or the systems of the yacht or ships on board. So yeah, but that's all about defending yourself, isn't it? It's about, keeping your guard up all the time and being a little bit suspicious all the time of connecting to that Wi-Fi. Make sure you use the VPN. Use a good password manager. I was recently speaking to somebody today who had their Office 365 account attacked. And the account that was attacked looks like it was brute forced by password. But the password they were using was what they thought was quite a strong password. So, yeah, it goes to show that, even with a strong 12, 15 letter character password, it can still be.
Well, yeah, but you can just buy programs nowadays, can't you? You just buy a program online, you plug it into your computer, and it will brute force attack anything. You leave it for like 10 hours until it breaks in. I mean, it's so simple to do now.
And there's lists of passwords on the internet as well. Every password that has been breached, or every website that's been breached, and they've been able to extract the password details from that website along with the email. That's now exists on a list.
That takes work. So nowadays, you can actually just get your computer to run the brute force program.
You just get that list of passwords that's already been breached. I mean, there's millions of passwords. So if you think your password's complex, there might be a chance that somebody else has used it in the past. If it's not completely random, and you've put a few characters in there or special characters, it might end up on that list. And if it's on that list, I just need to run my program against that list of passwords. Yeah. And I don't even need to do the brute force bit. If it's not in that list, then I'll go to the brute force bit. So, yeah, there's the tools are out there for you to do this stuff anyway. And I think even if you're not the target, and this is what we're going to see as a result of what's happening with Ukraine at the moment, is if you're not the target, you're possibly going to be collateral and inadvertently cause trouble to your systems. Just today, I think there's a group that have released a whole list of vulnerabilities on the operational technology systems on board. And it lists all the different vendors where PLCs are being used in the maritime industry that can easily be hacked. So ABB, there's Alan Bradley, for example, a lot of, top names in the control system industry that can be hacked. And now that information is being made public. So yeah, it doesn't need to be targeted. It can be completely random. And an attacker might not know that he's getting into a yacht system, just knows he's got some ransomware there. Somebody wants their data back. If they haven't taken the proper precautions, then unfortunately they're likely to pay for it. Whether they get their data back at that point, that's arguable.
Well, I think it's something that we have to be concerned about because the U.S. has already been stating for ages that if Russia made that move, there would be economic sanctions. Today, the EU stated the same thing. Later on today, I think there's going to be a press conference and they are going to, advise what sanctions they're going to take against Russia as well. So it remains to be seen, whether or not we will, because, Putin has said that if there is any interference from any Western countries, there's a problem. So there has been now with these sanctions. So it remains to be seen what the next step is for Russia. And I would just advise everybody to make sure that they're careful.
It's all geopolitics, isn't it? And I think with Russia's aligning with China a lot more, Russia have been spending a lot of time working their way off the dollar anyway. So they talk about all these sanctions. What effect are these sanctions really going to have? So far, they're not having much effect. And it's just, it's like, I'll wave a piece of paper at you if you go and kick that door down, Doesn't, in my mind, it's hot air against actual action that Russia are taking. And I think Russia would have seen that, and they would have planned for that over the past year. And in some ways, this is a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Is, you know, they in some ways maybe they should be drawing up their own borders between them rather than the West and these ex-colonial countries get involved to actually, you know, it's all
I do.
politics.
You know what? I don't even really want to know much about the politics of the situation, but I do know that I think that at some stage we all will be affected by this, not just the people of Ukraine. Of course, they will be much more affected, but I think we have to be aware, and we have to make sure that we do the things that we can do within our businesses, within our homes, in order to protect ourselves from being a victim of any sort of, you know, whether it be your finances, the banks. I mean, everyone is online banking. You know, you've got your cryptocurrencies, you've got your Revolut, you've got your Wise, you know, the billions upon billions of dollars that are sitting out there. I mean, it's easy capture.
Oh, there's already been attacks. I mean, you mentioned cryptocurrency there. There's already been attacks on exchanges where, you know, cryptocurrency's gone missing from certain wallets. So that's already happening. I'm pretty sure we're going to see an uptick on attacks of targeting cryptocurrency in particular over the coming months. What a great way to get those finances if you've got sanctions in place, despite whatever else you've been doing as well. Online banking, just that's always a dangerous one. Just make sure you've got all the precautions in place to protect your account and your money. Be careful where you're accessing the actual application itself. It's a crazy world we've built for ourselves. It's great. It's convenient. Life is so much easier. We live in a great time in reality. But when it comes to the security side of things, I think one of the upshots of what's happening with Russia, Ukraine, the whole West standoff, or now what appears to be war, one of the upshots will be that we will see these cyber attacks and people will start to take notice, I think, because it's bound to have that visual effect that people can see. And that's the problem. With cyber, it's not tangible. You can't touch it, you can't feel it. What are the consequences of it? And I think we're going to see that. That'll be the upshot of this, that, you know, that awareness is increased as a result of what's going on.
Well, Richard, if people have any questions in regards to their security, if they want to know if their practices are safe or not safe, if they want to have somebody come and take a look at their systems, can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely, yeah, please do. Will you share my details, or
I will make sure that all your details are below this interview when it airs, for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. So. I'm willing to take phone calls, email. Well, there's another form of communication. You know, probably best phoning me. But yeah, email. Also on the website, I'm available not just to come in and do consultancy, but also just sit down with crew members and, you know, 80% of protecting ourselves is all about the awareness. If we've got a little bit of paranoia, a little bit of suspicion, when we accept those emails, when somebody approaches us, offering us something, doesn't have to be in the virtual world. It's also a physical thing we're talking about here in terms of how scams start and cyber breaches happen. Then, yeah, quite happy to come in and talk about the issues that are out there and how all of us as individuals can better protect ourselves and ensure that we don't become a victim to cybercrime. If we're doing that in our personal lives, then naturally it goes to say that we should bring it into the workplace as well, and, you know, start protecting the work environment as well.
Wonderful, Richard. Thank you again for your time. It's really appreciated.
No, you're much welcome, Ria. Hope to speak to you again soon.
Of course. You've been listening to Richard Hodder on cybersecurity crime, especially with the effects of the Russian-Ukraine war and the potential that you need to protect yourself going forward. Richard is the CEO of Pelion Cybersecurity. We'll provide all his details below this interview when it airs. You've been watching another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next time.